we're now going to take a look at the lateral squat and the Cossack squat and progressions of how I would recommend working your way up to these. These are great exercises for increasing the length and strength of the adductor, which is important for change of direction and just overall hip health. So let's get started. We're now going to look at the lateral lunge or the lateral squat and progressions of how we would get ourselves towards this movement. This is great for change of direction sport athletes and anyone who just wants to feel a little bit freer around their hips. So I would typically start with what I call a sumo stance good morning or a sumo stance RDL. You don't have to do this with load. I'm just not in the mood to edit this video. So you're going to start with feet wider than the hips. Now the exact distance between your feet will be determined by your mobility. So the first step is just getting used to hinging at the hip whilst having your feet in a slightly wider position. So my feet are wider than hips, I'm tall through my chest, and all I'm going to do is sit my bum back. Now you're going to have an ever so slight bend in your knees as you do this, so your knees aren't completely locked out, but they are relatively straight. Now, if you've got restrictions on one side, so for example, I know my left side is more restricted than my right, then you might need to spend a little bit of time with something like a staggered stance RDL with that restricted side further forward, just to work on that before you get into these. So big chest, I'm going to push my hips back as far as my mobility will allow. The key thing is, as I'm pushing my hips back, I'm making sure that I stay nice and tall through the chest, push my hips back, hold for a second or two, and then come up. I also find it useful to think about squeezing the glutes in the top position. So obviously the glutes are the abductor, whilst the adductors are the adductors. So just by squeezing the glutes at the top, we can fire up the muscles on the other side. Once we're feeling relatively comfortable with the sumo stance good morning, then we can start making this a little bit more one side dominant. So what we're going to do is set up in a similar stance with feet wider than hips. Again, the width distance between your feet will be determined by your mobility. So from here, it's just that hip hinge, but it's going to occur on one side of the body. So my bum is coming back towards the wall behind me if it was there. I'm going to hold for a second or two and then push out. Now, if you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that I'm a fan of performing single side exercises on your most restricted side first, just to make sure that we're going to improve as this goes on. So if you're watching carefully, you'll notice that my right foot is sneaking further and further away from my left foot, as I can feel my bodybuilding tolerance to the mobility of this exercise. So I would do all of your reps on one side first, so your most restricted side, and then I would start to go towards the other side. Key things in this movement are that when I'm performing this lateral squat, that my feet stay flat on the ground. What sometimes happens if you're lacking mobility at the ankle is as you come down, that ankle wants to roll inwards. We want to avoid that by keeping both feet flat on the floor. And if that means bringing our feet in closer, that's absolutely fine. The final piece of the puzzle then is taking us from a lateral squat, which is what I've just performed there, into a full Cossack squat. So with the Cossack squat, rather than keeping both feet flat on the floor at all times, you're going to bring the heel of one of your legs, you're going to drive that into the ground so you can bring your toe up to the sky. So if I set my feet, so just to show you what that looks like, I'll show you on both sides just so you can see the differences, is as I push my hips back, that heel comes up and that allows me to sit deeper into what is now a Cossack squat. Again, I prefer prefer to do these all on one side before moving on to the other side. So sitting my hips back, I'm embracing that stretch position at the bottom before I drive up out of this leg. So Cossack squats are not only great for building more mobility than what we should hopefully need in our change of direction athletes, but it's also great for just loosening up our hips prior to getting into some normal barbell squatting, and also just giving us an extra bit of range to play with and just helping improve the function of our hips for day-to-day activity. So that is my progressions for both the lateral squat and the Cossack squat. Choose your poison wisely, and I would start with the sumo stance good morning, just to help ease your adductors into this movement.